Hello everyone, welcome back to Be the Hope. It is Friday, May 15th, Friday of the 5th week of Easter. Today, my reflections kind of feel like the weather. So, you know how it's been kind of dreary and gloomy and really rainy these past couple of days. That's just honestly kind of how my heart is feeling today. And the line that really struck me that just hasn't left my mind since I read it this morning is, "My heart is steadfast, O Lord." It was the first line of the psalm this morning. My heart is steadfast. And steadfast basically means that it's firm, it's in place, and that nothing will move it, no matter what happens, no matter what storms rage, no matter what happens. My heart is fixed in place, is fixed on the Lord. And I was reflecting on that and how difficult that is sometimes. Difficult it is to keep our hearts steadfast, especially in light of what Jesus says in the gospel. Jesus is talking about love in the gospel. He's talking about the fact that real love is laying down our life for our friends. And this is a line that can sometimes become a little bit cliche, right? We've heard it so many times said that real love is laying down our life for our friends, but when that actually happens in real life, when you actually have an opportunity to lay down your life for someone in real life, that's really hard. It's really hard. I can't say anything more than that really, but I've just been experiencing that so much lately, how hard that is to really live out that idea of love that Christ gives to us, that example of love that he gives to us. It's really hard for our hearts to be steadfast in love. But our psalm reminds us that our hearts are steadfast when we praise. Our hearts are steadfast in God's mercy and in his faithfulness, because we know that his mercy and his faithfulness will not change. That is why our hearts can be steadfast. The love of others, the love of those that we love, that can change. It can go up and down. It can move like the wind that's blowing around me right now. It can be like those storms that have come in and out of our area for the past couple of days. But God's love, his mercy, and his faithfulness, that is steadfast, and we are called to imitate that in our relationships with others, as hard as that might be. One other piece of hope that I found from the gospel today was how Jesus says that he calls us friends. He calls us friends, not slaves. And a friend is a friend and not a slave, because a friend knows what the master is doing, a slave does not. And I had to pause for a second when I read that line, especially in light of the other lines, especially thinking about my heart being steadfast and this idea of love, laying down our lives for our friends. I paused and I thought, every time that I have laid down my life for a friend, or have had the opportunity and not taken it, every time I've really tried to keep my heart steadfast in love. Many of those times, I'm not sure I really know what the Lord is doing, to be honest. Sometimes I have a glimpse of that, but sometimes it's such a mystery what the Lord is trying to do through this time of trial, because we know that love oftentimes requires sacrifice, right? It requires hardship, it requires pain on our part in order to love another person. And sometimes in the midst of that, it can be really hard to know what the Lord is doing. So I read that line and I thought, Lord, if I am your friend, which I know that I am, if I am supposed to be knowing what you're doing, then show me what you're doing. Show me what you're trying to do through this time where I'm trying to love, I'm trying to stay steadfast, but it's so hard. And the Lord just gently reminded me that I do know what he's doing. Maybe I don't know the details, but I do know that every time I remain in his love, every time I remain steadfast in faith, every time I lay down my life in service and love for a friend, I know what he's doing, because I know that he will work through that. I know that he will keep his promises. I know that he is working for my good and for the good of those who I am trying to love. So if you've ever experienced a time like that where you're trying to love, you're trying your hardest, but it's really hard, And maybe you don't see the fruit that is coming from that. Maybe you don't see how God is working for your good or for the good of those that you're trying to love. Know that He's still working. He calls you His friend, and you know what He's doing. You know that He will be faithful. You know that He will keep His promises. Trust in that. Trust in His faithfulness. Trust in His mercy. I'm telling this to myself today as much as I'm telling it to all of you. So I pray that your heart is able to remain steadfast today, that you are able to remain in the mercy and the love of God and share that with others, no matter how much of a sacrifice it might be, and that you might know what the Lord is doing through everything that you're going through, that you might see His faithfulness and His promises in your life and in the life of those that you love and that you are trying to love by laying your life down for them. So that is my prayer for you today, and God bless your weekend and the rest of your Easter season.